All right, let's kick off. Let's kick off. So today, thank you so much for joining on this Thursday afternoon. I am very excited to talk to you about how to scale the impact of DesignOps in 3D. This is my framework for how I think about what it takes to be successful in DesignOps. And it's with diligence, decision, and discipline. We're going to cover that today. Now, I want to ask you by asking you a question. I'd be grateful if you can let me know what you think about that in the chat. And the question is, what is the purpose of DesignOps? From your perspective, what's the purpose of DesignOps? What is it there to do? What are we trying to achieve? What does good look like with DesignOps? What's your perspective on this? Give you a few seconds to put stuff in the chat. Be great to get your thoughts. Facility, achieving an optimal ways of working, urge to organize chaos. Yes, yes, I've heard that term a few times. Chaos buster to enable, Martin says, to enable efficient design operations, team growth, and collaboration. So a lot of driving efficiencies, helping teams to collaborate and grow. Um, any more? Any more? Ben, to give designers and researchers a space back to do what they are excellent at and leave the rest for ops to manage, reimagine, improve, and lead. So giving some time back, sorting out all the crap around how the orgs work so that designers can do what they're really good at, which is designing, researching, enabling designers to design. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you. I like to think about it as helping design winning design organizations. So if we are trying to, deliver optimal ways of working, team growth, efficiency, organized chaos, enable designers to design, well, how do we know we're successful at it? How do we go and evaluate our success and the things that we hope to achieve? And so that is one word that always comes to mind when we think about success, and what is motivating us to do this work is impact. Because we all want to make a difference in the world and help our designers and our design team to succeed. Impact is what it's all about. But sometimes it doesn't go that way. It doesn't go that way, does it? Sometimes the initiatives we care so much about, we put so much focus and energy and effort in, fail to have a long lasting impact. It's not that the work wasn't good per se, but for some reason, it's just not delivering long-term value, not as much as we had hoped for. And I don't know if you've been there, but I've been there before, and that kind of sucks, right? So, you take an initiative, you pour your heart and soul into it, but it doesn't have the impact that you want. And one moment that really crystallized this for me, I was working on a careers framework, a skills matrix for the organization. And I'm in my desk and I typed the last piece of the jigsaw in this like massive Excel spreadsheet. And I'm like, yes, I've done it. I've done it. I finished my job. Perfect. It's version 327 of this skills matrix. I've done it. So I need to go and show it to someone. So I send it to the printer and I go and pick it up. And of course, it's a massive Excel spreadsheet. So I have to take 3 or 4 A3 pieces of paper and sellotape them together. And I take my skills matrix and I run across the office, just like a kid who wants to show their parent a picture. And I'm gonna go and I'll go to the exec corner because, of course, the execs have their own corner. And I'll show it to one of the design execs. And they look at it and they say, yeah, it's good. It's good. Let's add an extra dimension here, something new, something that hasn't been done before. And then you can talk about it at a conference. And I'm like, what? What? I'm not doing this to talk about it at a conference. I'm doing this because I want my work to have impact and support designers in my organization. Now, it's kind of ironic. I did this talk, I talked about this matrix at the conference, but not in the way that they thought I would. And so ever since that moment, it's like a switch had been flicked on, and I was determined for my work to have impact. But how? How do you scale the impact of DesignOps? Is it craft? Is it creativity? Is it people skill, vision, strategy? In my years and years of experience, I've come down to the conclusion that to have impact for DesignOps, you need to see the world in 3D. And that's diligence, decision, and discipline. And that's what I call the 3D framework. This framework transforms the way I work, and it transforms my level of impact. It will transform how you operate. It will transform how you approach your DesignOps projects and initiatives. It will transform how much you decide to invest your personal capital and energy into a project. It will transform your leadership, your performance, your impact. It will be a game changer. And there will be a before and after. And before, it's a bit like driving a car using an old road atlas map. And after, it'll be like using Google Map. You know the change, right? It's like seeing the world in grayscale and then seeing in color for the first time. It would be like moving from working in InVision to working in Figma. Too soon, too soon. The demise of InVision, just too soon, too soon. Okay, so today we're going to cover the 3D framework. I'm going to give you some tools so you can expand your toolbox, and I'm going to show you how to get started so that you too can think about how you can scale the impact of your DesignOps work. So let's start with diligence. So diligence, the story here is in my previous role, it's day one. I sit at my desk and I look at the leadership, the design leadership team Kanban board, and I have like all these cards, all these sticky notes with lots of different initiatives with the label saying one for DesignOps, DesignOps will sort. We don't have time to work on this right now. DesignOps will sort it out when we come. And I hear someone rolling their chair across the desk floor, and it's the design director. And they look at me and they say, Laurent, I know it's only day one, but one thing we need to do quite urgently is restart our design crits. They're really important to bring up the quality of the work. We haven't done them in a while. They really need to happen. Can you sort that out? And I say, cool. And he says, cool. And he rolls back to his desk. And my first thought was, really? Did you really hire me for this? Restarting design crits, that's a pretty simple job. I, set a recurring meeting, I set a reminder on Slack with a Slack bot, I book a meeting room, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. And then I had a second thought, and I thought, well, hold on, let me see what's going on here and do a bit of digging just in case. And so I went to speak to designers, and they started to tell me their horror stories. They started to tell me how in crits in the past, their work got ripped to shreds, how people got criticized, not critiqued, how the feedback was really harsh, and how, quite frankly, everyone, they did whatever they could to skip the design crits and not attend them. Now, can you imagine in that context, on day one, if I had immediately rolled out a new ritual around crits in this organization? It would have been a total failure, and it would have prevented me from building trusted relationships with the people I'm meant to be serving. And so I did what any normal person would do in this situation. I stalled. I stalled for as long as possible until it was the right time to relaunch these design crits. I eventually did it bit by bit. It took 18 months to get them from feared to loved, because sometimes it's not about what you want to do, it's when you want to do it. And so I really understood the importance of diligence in that context. So what is diligence? Well, diligence is conscientiousness in paying proper attention to a task, giving the degree of care required in a given situation. Essentially, it's doing your thorough homework. And this is important for DesignOps because designing winning design organization is not the same as designing products and services. You can think about it a little bit as designing a car. That's one job. But designing the factory is a very, very different job. You need a new skill, you need a new mindset, you need to understand this complex system that ultimately helps people design the car. Another way of thinking about this is thinking about the bottom part of this cultural iceberg model, right? What we need to understand before we jump into our DesignOps initiatives is to understand the invisible elements of the corporate culture. These are the unwritten rules that influence individuals and group behaviors and attitudes, the power dynamics in the organization, the role of status and hierarchy, how certain people are perceived, what people care about, all that stuff that you can't really read on an internet or a culture deck, right? And there are two ways to do this. One is searching for stories, and the other one is systems mapping. So searching for stories, this is really, really cool. I really like that. So these organizational stories, these legends or myths, they are the stories that reflect the history of the organization, its true culture and values, the power dynamics, that bottom part of the iceberg. And finding these stories is like tapping into the soul of the organization. So how do you go about doing this? One of the best thing to do this is to dissect high profile project successes, but also high profile failures. And the reason why this is important is that when people make decision today about the work that they want to do tomorrow, these past failures, they carry this past failure like a baggage, and it influences their decision making a lot. So when you move into a new team or a new organization, you really need to understand that, because what you think is a black and white, unbiased view of what we need to do is influenced by what's happened in the past. Okay, so you can talk to people about this. You can ask people about their best and their worst experiences as individuals or as teams. You can ask them about relationship between key stakeholders. Hey, how does, CTO and CPO work together? How does they get on? You can observe interactions in meeting and see who's talking, who stays silent, or how decisions are made. And some of these decisions, sometimes they appear like they're being made in a meeting, but actually they're being made really in informal conversation. These parts that people don't really talk about, they happen in the background. So that's one tool. And the other tool is system mapping. So quick systems thinking 101, an organization is like a system composed of many different parts. These parts work together to produce an outcome. And so the theory is that if you want to change the outcome of the system, we have to change the part, but also how the parts work together. And so with systems mapping, a systems map is essentially a diagram for sense making. It helps you make sense of all the information that you gathered and understand the cause and effects relationships, as well as the leverage points. The leverage points are the places in the system where you can have impact. Now, this is really important because a lot of the times there are areas that you think you may want to change, but first of all, you cannot control it. If you can't control it, you can't influence it. And so trying to work on this is a big waste of time. So here's an example looking at the impact of the external environment on the internal dynamics of the organization, and how in turn that impacted lack of product development as well as the environment designers are working in. Some of the constraints they feel, some of the disengagement that they may feel as a result of this. Here's another example looking more at the impact of the internal processes and policies on dissatisfaction and attrition. So, summary for diligence. One, do your homework, uncover the organizational stories, they are really, really important, and three, map the system. Once you've been diligent, then you need to think about how you're going to decide which initiative you're going to go after and which solution is likely to have impact and be successful. And that's why you need to follow decision. Now, I said before, I worked on careers framework a couple of times, a few times, and what I can tell you about career frameworks is that they can be a real game changer, but they can also be a big waste of time. And the first time I worked on a careers framework, I dived right in, just like this guy. I dived right in. uh, a quick 30 seconds of fame for that guy. But I was like him. I dived right in, right? Now, did he make a good decision? Arguably. Did he get like caught up in the moment? Did he have effective decision making? Did he think about the risks and the consequences? Maybe not. And so he paid the price. And that's a heavy price to pay, right? So uh, having a good decision making framework is really, really important. So what is decision? So if you look at the word decision, actually, a decision is a choice that you make about something after thinking about several possibilities. And in Latin, it literally means to cut yourself from any other possibilities. Now, when people think about decisions, they usually think about this dichotomy of head versus heart, and they're not mutually exclusive, right? You need head and you need heart to make effective decision. But on top of that, what you need is a strategic and systematic, repeatable process you can follow to avoid the belly flop like that guy and make really good decision about what you're going to go for. And you kind of need to think like a PM. DesignOps is the PM of the design organization, right? And so here's the process I like to think about when making decision. What is the problem to solve and who are we solving it for? What does a good outcome look like? Which metric will tell us if we're successful? What are the options? And what would have to be true? And today I want to narrow down on these last two. What are the options and what would have to be true? Because if we saw that, decision is cutting yourself from possibilities, first you need to expand the possibilities, right? And the one of my favorite tools for doing this is a table, a table. So whenever I have a important decision to make as a team, I use this matrix every single time because it allows me to influence decision makers. It allows them to see that I've really thought deeply about the options available, and it works every time. So let me break it down here. So whenever you do this matrix, I want you to have at least 3 options. First of all, because option 1 should always be to do nothing. This shows the impact of not making any decision, not taking any action, which in some cases is the best option. Then I want you to have, a few more options, at least 3, but I also want you to have a recommendation. If you are to be influential, you need to have a point of view on what we need to be doing. Then you go through the usual things around what are the advantages and the disadvantages of each option. Just the fact of writing this down and going through this table, through this mental exercise, helps you have a different point of view and challenge some of your own biases. And then you need to think about some other considerations. What are the risks involved in here? What are the dependencies? What are some of the assumptions that we're making if we think that this is going to be successful? And to uncover these assumptions, you can use the most powerful question in strategy, and it's, of course, what would have to be true? And this is one of my favorite questions because what that enables you to do is understand whether there are the right conditions in place for your initiative to succeed. And let me give you an example. So if we follow this kind of, think like a PM framework and talk about career progression for designers, what does a good outcome look like? Designers get promoted to the next level. That's career progression in action. Which metric will tell us if we are successful? The number of designers promoted each year. What are the options? Well, we think we need a new careers framework. Okay, but what would have to be true for that to happen? Well, for it to be a total success, we not only need the careers framework, we also need clear promotion processes and criteria. They are linked to the careers framework. We need designers to be able to evidence that they have improved their skills to a sufficient level. We need, as a design organization, to hold people to the same skill standards. And we need line managers and managers to have a growth plan and regular career conversation. If we do all of this, then the careers framework is going to have an impact. In the past, when it was a big waste of time for me, it's because it was not aligned to the promotion mechanism of the organization. The skill description didn't make sense because we had to choose from a central skill database because the organization was massive. Um, and there was no alignment or governance around how we were going to use this in practice. And so it was a total failure. So summary for decision: to avoid the belly flop, think like a PM, expand the options, and identify the critical assumptions. Now that we've chosen an opportunity area and we're going to really go for it, we need discipline. Now, we need discipline because we need to execute on the initiative because without execution, there is no impact. Okay? So, discipline. I learned the importance of discipline when I was working on standardizing job descriptions. At the time, we were growing massively, and there was an opportunity to standardize the job description across 5 different disciplines, 4 different levels. That's 20 job descriptions to create. And it made a lot of sense. That's a lot of juice to squeeze out of that orange. It's a lot of efficiency to drive. It promised so many benefits. It would free up time for hiring managers to actually hire and not focus on the process. It would speed up recruitment. It would create clearer and consistent expectations across the organization. It would ultimately help us elevate our design standards. And at first, it was great. Line managers started using this standardized job description. I even saw one of them on LinkedIn as like a proud moment, seeing your work on LinkedIn being used. But just a few weeks later, well, I actually need a product designer in my team, not a UX designer. Do you have a job description for that? In my team, I need a hybrid UXer and service designer who can also do a bit of research. Do you have a job description for that? Oh, I forgot we had these. I created my own. And so it didn't have the impact that we wanted because we didn't have enough discipline. There was no governance or team-wide processes to enforce these job descriptions. And so we kind of like left it to the hiring managers with no oversight or structure, no way of figuring out whether we were on track to deliver these promised efficiencies. Plus, there was no accountability either. No one was truly accountable for delivering these efficiencies. There was no OKR attached to it. There was no metric. And this meant that this lack of discipline led to little to no impact. So what does it mean to be disciplined? To be disciplined, you need to exhibit self-control and the ability to follow rules or a set of guidelines to achieve a desired outcome. It involves acting with control, structure, and focus. It is truly a superpower. So how do you do it? 3 things. 1, you need to define lead measures. 2, create a scorecard. And 3, set up an accountability cadence. So let's get into this. Act on lead measures. No matter what you're trying to achieve, your success will always be based on 2 kinds of measures: your lag measures and your lead measures. So the lag measures, they're the metrics that are used to measure past performance. It tells us at the end of the road if we've had an impact. And these are usually pretty easy to measure. But the problem is, you think about, employee engagement. People are talking here about, enabling growth, enabling designers, employee engagement. Employee engagement, the survey comes in once a year, maybe twice a year, if you're lucky. And so, there's no way of really finding out if you're on track to improve the engagement until the survey comes in. That's a really, really big lag. And that's why you need lead measures. Now, these lead measures, they're metrics that help you see whether you're on track. They are predictive of success, and they can be directly influenced by the team. They track the activities that will drive or lead to success. So to define these lead measures, a very simple checklist is it predictive of success? And two, can the team directly influence it? Then once you've defined these measures, you need a scorecard. Now, a scorecard is a very simple, very highly visual way of telling us whether we're on track to win. Okay, and that should include some of the lead and some of the lag measures. It's a bit like when you're playing basketball, you have the scorecard at the top. After 3 quarters, you're on top. It doesn't mean you're going to win, but, you're getting there. You're keeping score of what's going on. Now, here's a great example from Schneider Electric and their global quality scorecards by product. It tells us it's highly visual, it's very simple. People can see if we're doing well and we're on track to hit our quality measures. And what I love the most about this is that they also have the governance to back it up. And they, update the scorecard frequently. They define who's responsible for doing what. And it's just a great, great example of discipline. And so the accountability cadence is basically having a cadence, a regular rhythm of checking in on progress with the team, reviewing performance, and then planning for the next course of action. Because now, if we are not on track, we can try and rectify and move into a different way. So this helps people keep accountable to what they said they would do. It needs to be regular enough without making it too much of a distraction. And in terms of being regular enough, I remember one time someone said, well, if we check in on results or if we do planning every quarter, everything will take a quarter. So, think about having this sometimes every week, every 2 weeks, every month, but it needs to be regular enough. And that's what it takes to instill discipline in the team. Define your lead measure, create a scorecard, and set an accountability cadence. Now, let's go back to impact. I told you, for me, this way of working, this way of operating changed my impact. This is how I changed it. From, failing with my careers framework to getting over 15% of the designers promoted. From no impact on colleague engagement to really improving it from 58% to 80%. From spending weeks on job description to actually doing nothing this time around and saving my energy to focus on something that has a lot more value. And then from fear design crits to love design crits. That, for me, is the power of this 3D framework. So what's the summary and the implications? Summary of what we've seen today is that designing winning organizations is different from designing products and services. And so we need a new mindset and a new toolkit to do that. 2, you need to understand the ecosystem of the organization, its history, and its power dynamics. And that's why diligence is foundational to any impactful DesignOps work. We need to avoid our own biases, make the right choices, because we have limited resources and we need to use them wisely and go for the things that are going to have the most impact. That's why we need a systematic and repeatable decision-making process. And then ultimately, without execution, there is no impact. And so we need to instill discipline through layers of the organization. How do you start? We're going to take some questions in a bit. How do you start? Which one of the 3Ds would you like to dial up the most? Tell us in the chat. Is it the diligence part? Is it the decision part? Is it the discipline part? Tell us in the chat which one you think you'd like to dial up more. Diligence, Ben, you have to listen and then understand first. Decision, that's an interesting one, Silky. Maybe you can cover that in the Q&A. That'd be quite interesting. Decision. Um, let's keep it coming. Keep it coming in the chat. But what I would encourage you to do today is, I've run through like a number of tools. Try one tool from today. Try one tool from today, whether it's searching for stories, systems mapping, thinking like a PM, the decision-making framework, the scorecard. Try one tool from today and take it from there. And then if you want to learn more about it and get deeper into it, I have my training course on Maven that starts on the 16th of June. What you'll get in there is not only an in-depth look at the 3D framework and how to apply it, but also I'm kind of putting all my entire DesignOps playbook in there, right? So I'm giving you the careers framework step by step that drove 15% promotion. I'll give you the model I use to think about culture change and how to make it tangible because culture can feel quite woody and murky. I'll show you the mindset, tools, and skills model to scale that I use to scale design thinking to 5,000 people, the strategy for creating really good communities of practice and guilds, tooling strategy that helped me simplify the tooling landscape and save, nearly like 100K in spend, including an RFP that I used to onboard a new user research tool, people and talent management best practices, and more. And so the course includes 7 interactive live sessions, 28 in-depth lessons, 4 projects that you can apply and get feedback from me and the community, lifetime access to the material. Thanks, Diego. Speak soon. And also one-to-one coaching with me. And 2 more bonus sessions. One around presenting DesignOps work to executives because I also teach about public speaking. So I'll give you my framework for this. And a bonus session from Peter Boersma on how to create and maintain a DesignOps roadmap. And so enrollment for the course closes on the 1st of June. You will receive a link with 20% off if you want to sign up because you signed up for this lightning lesson. You get an email with the recording. And if you want to chat about DesignOps or anything, send me a DM on LinkedIn. We'll find some time to connect. No obligation or anything. Just have a chat, understand your situation, and take it from there. Right. Are you ready to see the world in 3D? Let's take some questions. Thank you, Matan. Any questions, you can drop them in the chat or just come off mute. Yeah, Ben.
Hey, thanks for sharing that, Laurent. It's really interesting to look at that kind of like that framework, and a lot of it resonates with kind of bits of my own experience in either establishing a design operations practice or optimizing an existing one in kind of like big British kind of brands and businesses. And
Yeah.
it's interesting when you do the kind of homework piece and you go on a listening tour and you do your kind of research and you understand the way the business kind of works and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You come up with all this kind of stuff to fix, right? And I've had that before where you've landed in a job and you go, okay, there's your inbox, and it's got like 400 things that have got design ops will do this, design ops will do that. This is for ops, and you're like, wow, that's almost like that's expected. And it's interesting when you try and work out what you have to say no to because you can't do everything, right? And I've been in teams of one and teams of more than just myself. It's interesting when you sort of get to that bit because I've definitely been in places where a lot of it is off the table. So when you talk about like the things that you can't control, so how can you have impact in a particular area when you haven't got the keys to even change some of the fundamentals? And it could be the funding model of the business, which is incredibly complex. It could be something to do with recruitment where they go, no, you can't write the job descriptions because they're written by here and they're based on, it's
Yeah.
amazing when you have all that stuff on the table and you realize that sometimes you just can't get into some of that stuff. And you have to start with almost like low hanging fruit just to show, I guess, some impact. Because you're like, these are the only things I can even get to right now. The other stuff is just, it feels so massive or locked or
Mm.
blocked or
Mm.
away from you. that's quite tricky sometimes because it's not always as easy as just trying to find a decent meaty project where you can get going on it. Because sometimes, especially in operations, right, um, big businesses are either new to it, they don't fully understand it, and they're a bit like, you can't come in here and change that. That's not for you to do. And you're like, then what am I expected to do? Because this is, I understand operations, having been done it for like over like 10 or 11 years. So it's hard that bit because it feels like a lot of the doors are shut sometimes. And you
Mm.
either knock politely, you find a key to open it, or sometimes, for want of a better word, you almost have to bash it down a little bit or find another door to get in because you'd end up just doing nothing but low hanging fruit. And that feels,
Mm.
you'll know this yourself, if you just do low hanging fruit all the time, I don't know, that isn't really, it's not, it doesn't fulfill me. Do you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah,
hard, that bit. That
yeah,
position's hard.
yeah, yeah.
Got any thoughts on that sort of situation where everything feels like it's not open for you to attack it or to have a go at it because it's just so, I don't know, locked or blocked?
Yeah, I think Hirsch, you want to comment on this in a bit. I think, um, you want to comment on this, Hirsch, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, just one thing is on Ben's point, a lot of times there are a lot of low-hanging fruits, as we know, and it's very obvious when you get into the organization and you're like, oh, when you're doing your diligence, you get to know, oh, this is something that has to be addressed as a P0. But I feel the other challenge along with identifying is, along with identifying this is a low-hanging fruit, because this has been a low-hanging fruit for a long time. Why has this not been addressed? And getting buy-in from design leadership to agree with you to start, then coming to decision and then discipline is something where um, is also like a skill that is needed for design ops, very key in terms of like, convincing or making sure like they're on the same page. Because you start like, you say, hey, this is a low hanging fruit about career ladders, for example, but then leadership never thought it was one. And they're like, oh, I don't think that's something that is P0. You could consider doing something else, that is low hanging fruit for now. So just, I mean, been there,
Mhm.
done that in previous organizations, so I know it.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's a few elements to this. I guess it depends how long you've been working with people. You know, if you're coming in and you're a new team member, um, I was fortunate, like in my previous role, I remember I gave my like 45 days in report to my VP of design, and she said, "Okay, tell me what's wrong with my team." But not everyone wants to know that, right? Not everyone wants to know that. So I think that the quick wins, the low-hanging fruit, they are really important because they help us establish trust. And they say, "Hey, we are all on the same team here, and we're aligned." Then I guess if you want to change bigger things, you need to build different relationships. So Ben, you were talking about, okay, I don't know, we're not allowed to change anything here because the door is closed. So uh, my advice here is to always think about, okay, I have this thing in my head. I think it's big value. Maybe the circumstances in the organization are not right yet for me to do that. But let me start building relationships, speaking to people, understanding what some of the issues are, and what I've done in the past, with working with capability or HR teams that talk to me about some of their initiatives or some of the like big programs of work. And I'm like, okay, how can I support that? And now I can like bring it's kind of like a Trojan horse kind of thing. I bring my stuff in to help them be successful. Now it's not like a big bang like design initiative, but I bring my kind of like designer way of thinking about it, my different perspective, and people then see a different way of working. And in my experience, that's been very, very successful. Uh, and because I'm helping them deliver on their program, and they're, oh look, they're doing things like slightly like differently in design. This is quite cool. Maybe we could expand that. Or another way of doing this is running a trial. If you're like really trying to like convince people, you also have to challenge your own biases. Like you think it's a good idea, but really, do you have any data? You have one perspective. It's only one perspective. Like 5 other people around here, they have different perspective than you, and so it may not be the right thing to do right now. Okay, well, let's do it. Let's run an experiment or a trial or a proof of concept and figure out together what are the boundaries around this experiment, what are the things that we are allowed or not allowed to, challenge, and then what are the measures of success. If we can agree on that construct, then we have data. And once we have data, it becomes harder to ignore. But it's also a good reminder that, what we think would work maybe didn't. I once tried to stand up so our organization was like 350 designers. We wanted to get like more mobility in the team. So we try and set up like a job swap initiative. Hey, you in this value stream, in this value stream, you're looking for a move, let's just swap you around. Loads of great feedback in, concept exploration. When it came to delivery, one person signed up because it was not the right time and the way we kind of like went about it actually is not right. It's actually more about speaking to line managers and getting them to think about more organically when the time is right. So when the matter comes up, think about then this as an option, as opposed to having like a big program with a fixed deadline where you have to swap your job by the 1st of June. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, it's really helpful, mate. It's really helpful. So thank you for sharing and thanks for giving that kind of input to it as well. Yeah, some good stuff there. Thank you.
Silky, you ask, how do you see design ops evolving over the next 2 to 3 years in the context of AI? I don't know. I don't know. I think that the direction of travel, even before AI, is to consolidate the different ops functions. So I think if you're doing design ops, there's no reason why you can't do product ops, and that can be like a single role. Design ops, yes, it does help like the design team, but really when product design engineering work together, they're not all co-designers, but they are designing together as part of like the design process. Some call it, product development life cycle. And so there's no reason why you can't help that entire team improve their ways of working and make it more efficient and effective. In the context of, we kind of like descaled the size of the design teams. And so I think as some of the AI tools come in and make things easier, I don't see why you would need to have a design ops team and a product ops team. But I guess it depends on the context of the organization. Do you have any thoughts on this, Silky? Have you thought about it? You still there? Maybe not. Never mind. Oh, you have no voice. Of course. Of course. No worries. Okay, any more? Cool. I hope you find this session insightful and useful. You'll get the recording. If you want to chat some more, send me a DM on LinkedIn and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks, mate. Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.